There is a certain subset of the population that doesn't want to do the carnivore diet because they think it's too risky. They think to themselves, well, there's no long-term studies, and although hundreds of thousands of people online talk about how it's changed their lives, because of this lack of evidence, it may not be in their best interest to do the carnivore diet. So in today's video, we're just going to simply look at the alternatives to carnivore. The first is the standard American diet, which is just your regular diet that most people from Western nations, and I guess, well, the majority of the world eats nowadays. Over 40% of people will get cancer. 1 in 2 people will have some cardiovascular disease. 35% of people will get diabetes. And seemingly everyone is chronically depressed and anxious. Seriously, I know 20-year-olds with perfect lives. They're in great shape. They're at a good school. Everything is going their way. There's no reason that they should be depressed even slightly. And even despite this, they are chronically depressed. These numbers that I've just discussed are only going up. And humans are the only species where we have widespread chronic disease. Now, if you think a diet where you're almost guaranteed to have some sort of chronic health issue is better than this untested diet where everyone feels amazing and everyone seems to be doing amazing, you have to be a complete moron. And I don't say that to be rude. I say it because that is the fundamental truth. Most people will wishy-washy their way around this and say, oh, well, you do what's best for you, whatever you think is best, but I'll tell you the truth. And the truth is, if you think the standard American diet is less of a risk than the carnivore diet, you are a moron. Then we have the Paleo living off the land as we're allegedly meant to eat diet. What about a diet that's high in meat with some fruits and vegetables? Well, here's the thing. Fruits and vegetables aren't real. Every single fruit or vegetable that we consume has been crossbred for the last 12,000 years or so, since we've started agriculture. All the fruits we consume nowadays are 10 times sweeter than they originally were. And all the vegetables that we consume, well, they're not even real plants. These vegetables have been crossbred from other plants. How they do this is they get 2 plants and grow them in close proximity to one another. From there, they mix the pollen from each plant. And so from these 2 plants, you get this third hybrid style of plant which contains genetic traits from both of the original plants. And if you do this enough times, where you get the sweetness traits from one plant and the pest resistance trait from another plant, and you continue to do it, what happens is you grow these ultra sweet but ultra pest resistant plants like we have nowadays. None of these fruits and vegetables are even real. And even if they were real, they're covered in massive amounts of pesticides, which are quite literally lab-made chemicals designed to kill insects or birds that try to eat these plants. Now think about that for a second. If they're designed to kill an animal, what sort of effect is it having on us? We see this time and time again in studies. They damage our gut and they cause inflammation to us. And then, well, because they grow these vegetables in the same soils over and over, all the nutrients from that soil become depleted. In a proper ecosystem, you'd have animals that would then come on these fields and they'd re-fertilize the soil with their stools. But because they just grow crops over and over on the same soil, and consequently, these fruits and vegetables grow with considerably less nutrients than they typically would have. And then you have the defense compounds from these plants themselves. Every single plant has a monumental amount of these. Lectins, tannins, hormone disruptors, these are just a few of many. This is why every single plant, except from the genetically modified fruit, which is just outrageously sweet, tastes incredibly bitter to us. Our taste buds take one bite of these things, they sense the defense compounds, and we get this bitter taste. A lot of people think they like vegetables. You don't. You like the butter it's cooked in, or the salt and pepper you put on top of it, as well as the countless other spices. Humans have this highly advantageous survival ability to grow an acquired taste to certain plants. And the reason for this is because, while our bodies think, if we're consuming massive amounts of this, it must be the only food that we have available to us. And if we don't start to make it taste at least semi-tolerable, we're not going to eat it, and we won't get the energy we need to survive, and therefore we'll die. So if you think you like a vegetable, stop eating them for a month and eat it again. Once you've lost this survival adaptation, it will taste how it truly is meant to taste, and that is not very pleasant. Now, even on this paleo, living off the land diet, in the nations where they have no processed food and they eat this way, they don't live past 80. Very few individuals make it to 100. Humans are meant to live to 120. Every organ in our body can live that long if we don't interfere with ourselves and inflame our bodies. But virtually no one even gets close to that mark. This right here shows the issues that we have when we're consuming massive amounts of these plant defense compounds that are quite literally designed by the plants to kill predators that try to eat it. The fact is that humans are carnivores. Up until about 12,000 years ago, till about 2.5 million years ago, a large proportion of the earth was covered in ice, which means we had very little access to plants. So humans basically had to exclusively eat big mammals. Mammoth and buffalo were among the animals that we consumed a lot of. And for those of you thinking to yourself, well, how on earth did we kill mammoths? Well, it's no different to how we could very easily kill elephants. They get curious, they think, what are these little guys going to do to us? And then suddenly, when 5 or 10 spears hit them, they come to the realization that maybe we're not quite as harmless as they once thought. And this is further supported by the fossils we find during this period. Humans had the highest nitrogen-15 ratings on the planet, and how that works is the more carnivorous a species is, the higher the nitrogen-15 rating is. So just by looking at these fossils alone, we know that we were more carnivorous than every other animal, including lions, wolves, tigers, you name it. So then we can eat the risky option, a carnivore diet, where we only eat the one food that doesn't have a single identified compound in it that's toxic to us. And it's also the only food that contains every single nutrient we need in the perfect quantities. Isn't that a weird coincidence? It's almost like we've eaten only meat for the majority of our existence, so our body has gotten used to having that amount of each nutrient. Then we also have the evidence from the fossils we found at that time. Up until the agricultural revolution, all the fossils that we find had very little lesions and markings on them, which indicates we had very little disease. A lot of people like to talk about, oh yeah, why would I want to live like our ancestors who only lived to 40? This could not be further from the truth. By looking at fossils alone, we cannot determine the age of the fossil. However, based on the fact that they had very little of these lesions and markings which indicate disease, we can conclude that we were very healthy up until we started eating plants. Then we have groups like the Inuit. The Inuit population, who lived exclusively on salmon, were very healthy individuals. In fact, there was a man named Vilhelm Stephenson, whose name I've probably just completely botched, lived amongst the Inuit for a year early in the 20th century, and he reported that they had phenomenal health. And because he was forced to live with them, he had to eat their diet, in which he talked about how he'd never felt better. In fact, when he came back, he was actually one of the first people to promote a carnivore diet. Unfortunately, however, the Inuit have switched up their diet and they now eat the ultra-processed foods that we do. And like us, they have terrible health now. We have zero evidence that meat is harmful for us in any way. The only studies which show meat to be bad for us are poorly designed and have a massive issue which ruins their credibility called healthy user bias. I made an entire video on this topic which I'll link to at the end. If everyone who goes on the carnivore diet feels way better and they continue to feel better the longer they're on it, how could that be harmful for us? Every other carnivorous animal on the planet, like humans, has very little disease, except when we domesticate them and feed them the same foods that we eat. The lifespan of golden retrievers has gone down significantly ever since we started feeding them more and more of these grains. How is it that modern diseases are caused by ancient foods? We've always eaten meat, yet the first heart attack only occurred in 1912. In the year 1900, 1 in 17 people died of cancer, and now 1 in 3 people die of cancer, and 1 in 2 people get cancer. Please can someone explain to me how modern diseases are caused by the one food that we've always eaten? In summary, the biggest risk is not being on the carnivore diet. You're guaranteed to lose. You either have a high chance at getting a disease, or you go on the paleo route and cut 20 to 40 years off your lifespan that in theory humans should be having. I understand how hard it is for some people to go against some belief that they've believed so strongly for an extended period of time, but you need to do the maths in your head. It has nothing bad. It contains everything we need. There's no studies showing it bad. Everyone who goes on it feels way better, and all these diseases that people allege are caused by red meat didn't even exist until recently. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, consider subscribing. See you next time.